everyone tonight to the Madawaska Maliseet First Nations roundtable session with the National Citizens Alliance. And tonight it's not going to be a traditional roundtable. I'm going to answer questions so we can at least start a relationship with the Mailiseet First Nations. And also we're here to listen to the Mailiseet Nation and their concerns, as we would for any other Canadian community First Nations in our country. Also tonight we're going to do a review of our Aboriginal policies, but also look at other policies that are relevant to the Mailiseet Nation, First Nations. And because it's not just Aboriginal policies that they're concerned about, we're assuming, but we're going to find out more tonight. And you know, we do honor the Mailiseet Treaty of 1725, and this is the foundation for this First Nation, and also the World Proclamation of 1763, and this established the treaty making process. And further still, the Charter, although we have issues with the Charter, we don't have issues with Section 35 of the 1982 Charter, which mandates the federal government to consult First Nations. And right now that consultation is not being honored from our sources. But I'm just gonna do a quick summary, but then I want to get into questions because we want to hear from you. It's not about us tonight, but at least we can at least tell you where we're coming from a starting place. Perfect. But for us, the First Nations, the Métis, the Inuit are integral, fundamental to the identity, the heritage, the culture of Canada. That is preordained in our country as far as we're concerned. They were here pre-Confederation all the way through our country, and they contributed in their own ways to the formation of Canada. So that's something we recognize. There are threats going on now as we get, you know, into 2018, the 21st century. There is globalism going on in our country, and there's severe change going on, and we all need to recognize this. And as a party, we're very transparent about this globalism threat that's going on, which includes open borders, mass immigration, you know, the banking, commercial banks taking over the country with their power and all the debt going to them, and catering to foreign interests over our own people, including our First Nations. And all the foreign monies flowing out of our country. Just imagine, it's like a bucket of money. All our hard-working tax dollars, and there's a hole in it. And it's just the hole's getting bigger, and it's just flowing out. But it's not flowing out to our people, it's flowing out to other countries, the special interests, the commercial interests abroad. We don't know what's happening with these billions and billions and billions of dollars. So we're very concerned about that. And the cornerstone of our policy is to honor the Canadian Constitution Act. It mandates the federal government jurisdiction over First Nations, Aboriginals affairs. Right now there's First Nations living in squalor. They don't have proper drinking water, they don't have proper sanitation. We all know the history of the abuse. We know that they weren't treated as people through the Indian Act when it first came out, so we're concerned about that. But I'll tell you this, under NCA in office, not a single dime of foreign money will leave this country until those issues are resolved in the First Nations community. We're sending billions and billions of dollars out. Our veterans are on the streets. We have seniors, many seniors, First Nation seniors, Canadian, you know, other Christian, whatever you want to call them, Canadian. We have many unemployed in our country. Yet that bucket, all this money's flowing out. So that's what we will do. We will not allow one penny to leave this country until our people are looked after. And right now, with the mass immigration going on, our traditional identities, and I include the Francophones, the Anglophones, and our Aboriginal people, are under a threat through this globalism. It's a cultural threat, it's a heritage threat, it's attacking our identity. We're not against immigrants at all, but we need to protect who we are as a people. This is our home. People should not be coming here and pushing their stuff on us and taking our home, our way of life away from us. And I'm going to be very honest to our Aboriginal First Nations friends today. They're a smaller community in our country, and therefore they're more at risk because of population size. And some of these people, they are ruthless, they are out for themselves, they're religious fanatics who only put their faith first, and we've seen it firsthand. And I'm speaking from experience. We had stuff happening in Montreal. We just came from Montreal. We had stuff happen there. And it would shock you. It would shock you to your core if you knew what was going on. And I'm sure you do. But we have to protect our culture. Otherwise, we're going to lose it. We're going to lose who we are. And you got to fight. You got to fight sometimes. And we can fix the problems of our country. It's fixable, but there's so many sellout politicians to commercial interests. They're selling out our country. But let's wake up, Canadians. And I'd welcome questions from the Mailiseet First Nations.
Let's talk about immigration for a minute. There's a lot of reasons for that globalization going on, which you mentioned quite a few. You know, another one is Canadians' relationship to their allies. You know, it's we are being an ally to a forceful military of the United States who has been at war in the Middle East for over a decade. We have created the scenario of war-torn countries that these immigrants are now looking to get out of. I would want to get out of the way of a U.S.-led military invasion, and so do these immigrants. How does your party see bringing into Canada the immigrants of families, like we saw across the news with the Syrian? We can't just become like our brother next door, the United States, and close our borders to certain people when we are in those countries creating the issues that they're trying to escape. How does your party see immigration from that standpoint?
That's a huge subject, and I'm only going to touch on a few aspects because I could talk about that all night. Okay. The bottom line is our people come first. Our First Nations come first. Our Canadian people, which I include First Nations, come first. That's bottom line. We're not a charity, this country. This is about our people, our money, our hard work. That's number one. That has to be number one. Anyone who comes across that border, they have to be properly screened. We support ideological screening. We don't want radicals coming in this country. There's lots of them, and we've met them. We know them, and we will be posting later this week about that. We have to protect our people. We need stronger screening. But this immigration is just not about refugees. There's been a mass immigration agenda since the 1960s. Right now, there's thousands of unemployed foreign university students, unemployed foreign graduate students that are flowing into our country. They're undermining our economy. They're working under the table for cash. That's what's going on. They're adding to the unemployment, the stress, everything. That's what's going on right now. Thousands. The typical immigrant coming in is economic immigrant. If you look at the numbers, right now they're bringing in, it'd be about 100,000. Close to between 70 and 100,000. Most of them are coming in. Refugees are only one part of that. Understand that. And I want to make a point here. There's a myth. There's a lot of myths that are being perpetuated in Canada. And I'll tell you one, it's being perpetuated by those establishment parties, the corporate media, and all through our institutions. Right from a kindergarten all the way up. That immigration is good for the economy. There is no evidence that that is true. Canada had its best economic performance when it had net negative immigration. And I'll give you another example. I can't go into it all tonight, but the immigration happening right now is taxation negative. Right now, over $30 billion we're losing on immigration in terms of services consumed versus taxes paid by the people coming in. And that's a very lowball estimate. It's probably 40 billion plus every year. So remember that bucket I was talking about, flowing to these foreign countries, which are basically benefiting special interests, commercial interests, and then they cover it up into some humanitarian cause. Then add in these immigrants coming in and the money flowing out there. Now you know why this government, when they look at veterans and say we don't have enough money. You see what's happening? We're not against immigrants. But remember, mass immigration is very, very bad for the Canadian economy. It only benefits select commercial interests, and it benefits establishment parties through votes and money trickling back to them. That's what's going on. We need to have an honest dialogue on immigration.
So do you think that immigration is a bigger problem, or do you think the corporate welfare is a bigger problem? Which one do you think wastes more of the Canadian taxpayers' money? Because you're right, it's going to boil down to the Canadian taxpayer, and that's who it should boil down to. So where's the problem? Is it in immigration, or is it in corporate welfare?
They're both the same thing. Corporate welfare, mass immigration, are feeding commercial interests. And everyone, the corporate welfare is obscene. I'm glad you brought that up. I'm very happy you brought that up. The corporate welfare is unbelievable. Over 500 companies. We don't even know, but the Canadian public barely knows about it. Yeah. But millions and millions of tax dollars. Again, this benefits these establishment parties. They're getting perks back, right? The money's flowing back. There's a crisis of corporate welfare in this country. Welfare makes us weak. And the welfare makes us weak. When we're dependent on handouts, we're weak people. We need independent people. We need to be strong. We need to be self-sufficient. And that's our approach to First Nations. We will work with, hopefully, Aboriginal contractors in every reserve. But we're not going to bring people in to bang the nails. It's going to be Aboriginal First Nation people doing that. It's got to be self-sufficient. We got to, and you will be stronger as a nation, and our country will be stronger. But this mass immigration, it is killing our country right now. It's killing our country. It's killing our identity, our heritage, our culture. It's harming our economy. And to put this in context, we're heading into AI. You can see it happening every day. Like we're driving a car now with sensors. So if we go over there, it lets us know, right? And that's going to take jobs away. There's cars with sensor. We were talking about it on the way, because they won't need anyone to put the indents in the roads anymore. That's going to take jobs right there. That's one example. But that is coming, and there's reports out that we're going to lose up to 50% of our jobs. Yet they're bringing, this government in power said they're going to bring in 1 million immigrants within 3 years, and they were all proud about it. But this is not good for the majority of Canadians. Remember that. It is not good. And I want to address one issue on immigration. And this is the biggest myth happening. They say that Canada was an immigrant country. They say that. And that's a complete lie as far as we're concerned. The Aboriginal First Nation people were here. And then you could argue the settlers, the pioneers, you could call them colonialists if you want, depending on your view, but they came here. And then they built up the land. The fertility rates were sky high. Actually, in pre-Confederation, we were exporting people out of this country. It's a myth. The bottom line, it was the Francophones, the Anglophones, other Euro-Canadians, and the First Nations that built this nation we have. That's the bottom line. And we have to be honest about that dialogue. Thank you for your question, sir.
I have one more on immigration.
Sure.
The current party and parties before them, I don't know how far back, but the current one and the party before, the Conservatives, both of them would bring foreign workers into Canada without putting the unemployment rates of First Nations into the statistics. Will your party look at First Nation unemployment rates before you look to foreign workers coming into Canada?
We will dismantle the temporary foreign worker program. We will dismantle that corrupt program that is favoring certain globalist corporations. It's completely a racket. There's employment agencies that are making millions off it. Foreign workers, sadly, are being abused and exploited. Our Canadian workers, First Nations included, are being pushed aside. That has to be dismantled. I couldn't believe this. We just came from Montreal, and I ended up, I guess it was fate, I ended up meeting one of the councillors from the city of Montreal, and we just went at it. And he said exactly what he said, oh, these corporations are telling me to bring in more skilled workers. And I looked at the guy, I said, your unemployment rate in Montreal is like 10%. It's probably higher. It's all underinflated, right? Because as soon as someone stops looking for work, they don't count anymore.
Or the AI runs out.
Right? Right? So here he is. He wants to bring more foreign workers to cater to these companies that are probably funding his campaigns. You see the corruption going on in this country. It is sick. It is sick. People need to wake up. Yeah. So we got to dismantle that. This has to be not about establishment parties and select commercial interests. This has to be about all Canadians and our welfare, our well-being. We're sickened as a party. You see our motivation. It's well-founded. Right? Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you
No
very
more
much.
questions?
Thank you.